number 8 from the CC manual. Get comfortable with visual aids. And the objectives are, select visual aids that are appropriate for your message and the audience. Use visual aids correctly with ease and confidence. Mr. Timekeeper, the speech is 5 to 7 minutes. And the title of the speech is Deaths from War.
Great, thank you, Jill. Corey's been with the club for 2 years. He's done 8 speech. This will be the 8th speech after tonight. I said, what does Give It Away mean to you? And he says, it's a red hot chili peppers song, which is true because I Googled it myself, so I know that. Please help me welcome Corey Brewer to the lectern.
There we go. All right. Hands up to anyone that watches the news. I assume most of you listen to the radio, AM maybe, or watch the news. And if you watch the news, you're probably inundated with all the violent propaganda that the media portrays to you. If you watch the news, you might feel hopeless watching all the violence. What do we see on TV? We see threats of nuclear war, North Korea, Russia, Iran. We see school shootings. We see bombings. There's a lot of terrible violence out in the world. And in my speech tonight, I'm going to talk about one of the worst. And that's deaths in war. I'm going to take you on a journey. I'm going to show you a lot of statistics about how bad war was. And then I'm going to take you through to the other side and show you what it's like now. Now, you may be thinking my speech might be a little morbid, but it's not. You're going to come out of this feeling a lot better than when you came in. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. Does anyone know how many people died in World War II? Ballpark, anyone?
Million.
2 million.
Upwards of 80 million is what is a high estimate. Most historians believe it was somewhere between 60 to 70 million people died. At the time, in the 40s, that was 3% of the world population, wiped out completely. And it happened in such a short period of time. To put that in another perspective, population of Canada, 35 million or so? Imagine every single person in Canada wiped out twice over in 6 years. So in my speech tonight, done a little introduction, I'm going to show you a couple slides of statistics about how bad war was. And then I'm going to go through a little history of since World War II and some of the wars since then. Now, the next 2 slides, a lot of facts about World War II in particular. Just how bad and how brutal World War II was. 400,000 Americans died in World War II. That was the same as all 13 years in the Afghan War. France lost 92,000 people in one battle alone. Britain lost 400,000. 6 million Jews. That was more than everyone's estimate put together. 6 million Jews alone died in the Holocaust. 16% of the total population of Poland died. That's almost 3 million. The Soviet Union killed 2.3 million Nazis by themselves. And the Soviets also had 9 million, just about 9 million Russian soldiers died, and over double that civilian deaths. In total, around 22 million European deaths alone, and even China and other countries like that you don't typically think of as a big part in World War II had huge losses, lots of people dying. They had so many people die partially because of the actions of their own government. Civilians of all countries were exterminated. They were fired upon. They were used as human shields. Civilians and soldiers of different countries were put into work camps. They were put into gas chambers. There was terrible, terrible medical experiments performed on soldiers as well, and even civilians. And as I was saying, World War II, more people died in World War II than in any single war in history. And the brutal part of it is it happened in 6 years. Now this is the peak. This is one of the worst wars in history. So hopefully it can get a little better. And it does. The data since World War II shows something extraordinary. World War II is where the human civilization is at one of its worst peaks, but now we are in one of the most peaceful times in history. It is termed such as the long peace. And if you look at this graph here, this is since the 1500s, the percentage of which the great powers in the world have fought each other has steadily declined until it's bottomed out in the 2000 onwards rate. Things are drastically improving. The average lifespan of humans in the world has more than doubled to 80 years old. And we haven't seen peace like this since the early Roman Empire. That's thousands of years. There's another graph right there I've got. Battle death rate in all state-based conflicts. That peaked in World War II and has bottomed out again there as well. Now, why is this? Why are countries not fighting each other? Why are there so many less war deaths? And there's a whole lot of different reasons, but the gist of it is the richest countries in the world are not fighting each other. You don't see colonial wars anymore. You don't see interstate wars anymore. The only wars you see are smaller civil wars. Well, just as terrible, but it's not the same destructive power as when the big countries fight each other. Our world population has more than tripled since World War II. And in line with that, war deaths have dramatically decreased. Now, what could cause this? I couldn't give this speech without talking about a couple different causes. These are some of my favorite, but I'm sure there's many, many others. Increased globalization, technology, such as social media, people are becoming closer together. Increased commerce. This isn't after the Great Depression where countries are poor and every country now is much richer than they were back then. There's the nuclear deterrence. Who would want to attack Russia or the States? It's suicide. There's more centralized governments, and of course, nobody wants a repeat of World War II. Now, peace is a very difficult thing to measure, but peace is what we almost have now. If you look at it in a sense of war, this is the most peaceful time in the world. So when you're watching the news and you see mass amounts of violence and terrible things on the TV, and that doesn't leave you feeling hopeful, then I hope my speech and the data, if you look at the data, I hope that leaves you feeling a lot more hopeful. Because we do live in the most peaceful time in the world. So be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Troy. Very fitting, because I'm interested in the news. They're talking how